Hello, this is Derek Fujio, and this oral report fulfills the final requirements for Music 601, A History of Music Education, for the University of Hawaii at Manoa, Dr. Barbara McLean.
Unit 1, Ancient Music Education. For this section, my takeaway idea was that many ancient cultures held music in very high social, religious, or scientific regard, setting up different types of music educational systems to transmit their knowledge. The ancient Jews believed that music should be universal and all worshippers should use music to sing the praises of the Lord. As such, they set up a system for training cantors to send musical knowledge from a central synagogue out to all the other synagogues. The Greeks, through Pythagoras, felt that music was innate in nature and that the ratios and proportions found in the music of the spheres could be applied to music as well. They felt through the doctrine of ethos that human spirit and action and thought could be affected by music, and so they educated people with music in mind, training the mind and body, and later on teaching people to be good citizens through listening to good music. In the Middle Ages, the clergy used music heavily, and many of the inventions of music notation, such as solfa notation, the staff, and the Guidonian hand, came about so that they could spread the musical word to all the clergy who were singing in the churches. Finally, in Italy, the concept of the conservatory was born when hospitals, ospedali, or conservatorio, orphanages set up to help young children use music education to further social and aesthetic causes. Unit 2, Colonization and Music. My takeaway idea from this section was that the development of early American music education centered around the singing, usually of psalms, and conflicting opinions of how best to teach it. When the Pilgrims came over, they brought with them some psalms, which later expanded into the Bay Psalm Book, which was incorporated and printed for the first time in the United States. Since that first move, the debate has gone on whether to teach music in the old way, by rote and repetition, by following a singer, or the new way, by reading music. As the country grew and developed, the singing of psalms in churches continued to be popular, and this singing drove much of the educational innovation of the period. The development of singing schools and the rise of singing masters all stemmed from increased public interest in the act of psalm singing. Furthermore, publications included primers and tutorials, as well as part books that helped people learn to sing in multiple parts. Later, the development of fazola singing and shaped note notation highlighted a difference and a schism between the southern and northern styles of American psalm singing. This period was also marked by the rise of uniquely American composers such as William Billings, who wrote in a style similar to that of old European traditions, but in a much more rustic and vernacular style, accustomed to the American hymn singing. Eventually, a change in attitude led to the decline of the singing school and of shape note singing in general. Viewed as uncultured and lower class, opinion eventually shifted towards singing societies, the works of Europe, and paved the way for singing in schools. Unit 3, Growth of Music in the United States. My takeaway idea from this section was that societal changes and advances in industry and technology lead to the democratization of music and music education in the United States. Building on societal changes in the early 1800s, Lowell Mason was able to include music in the public schools elementary system in the areas of chorus. As these students matriculated and more people moved to the cities and joined the public school system, the need for high school music increased. Advancements in technology such as the phonograph and radio allowed for the rise of music appreciation classes because they had access to high-quality exemplars of musical performances. After the World Wars, improvements in industry and popularity of military bands led to the inclusion of instrumental music in the high schools, including concert bands and orchestras. Later on, through the college system and ROTC programs, marching band would be added as well. With this influx of music classes, there was a large growth in the number of music teachers in the United States. Initially, just music supervisors, they grew in numbers until they needed their own convention. Following the postponement of an NEA convention in 1906, the Music Supervisors National Conference met for the first time and found strength in numbers. In collaborating together, they were able to combine their forces and their observations and create a workable support group that would last over a century. In this way, music was democratized. more students had access to music. In the high schools, they had more choices of what type of music they wanted to take. And finally, music educators in the United States were fully represented with a voice on the national stage through the MSNC. Unit 4. Music Education Grows. My takeaway idea was that following the World Wars, music education in the United States becomes increasingly national affair, balanced between government oversight and reactions from the national music associations. Technology will continue to play an increasingly important but unpredictable role in shaping music education. Since Sputnik and the space race, education in the United States has been increasingly an accountability movement and increasingly STEAM-based. Reports such as A Nation at Risk prompted the United States federal government to increasingly regulate national education. Implementations such as No Child Left Behind and Race to the Top continue to affect policy regarding state and local education policy. However, at every step of the way, the growing and increasingly powerful NAFME, National Association for Music Education, helped by drafting policy and providing ways that music educators within their classrooms could abide by the new federal regulations while teaching music in an authentic manner. Online discussions. My takeaway message from the online bulletin board discussions is that music education is an incredibly personal, individual, and regional concept. The conditions that shape a teacher, pedagogy, classroom, or philosophy are the products of many influences surrounding it. This was deeply apparent when we were called upon to bring our own influences and ideas to bear. The ones that really stuck out to me were the ones such as identifying Pestalozzi in your classroom. Educators spoke out about what they were doing in their classroom, and it gave really good insight into what was happening in classes of different ages, different regions, different backgrounds. This was also apparent in the discussion board about music in the 21st century. We were sharing our predictions of the future, and many of it was shaped by our own opinions of what we were doing in our class that we felt was classical, as well as what we felt was innovative. The ways in which we innovated definitely shaped our lens of what we thought innovation in the future would look like. And I think being able to share that with fellow educators was one of the most valuable experiences of the course, even down to the issues of nationalism from Chris in Canada, public versus private school, K through 12. There were so many disparities in our experiences, and we were able to track the ways in which it shaped our thoughts and our practices. I think this sort of collaboration and communication is one of the most important things that is not often available to educators today. The ability to empathize and see through another's eyes. In conclusion, one of the overarching themes for the history course that I noticed was the idea that history comes in waves or cycles and is driven by opposing forces. This is not a new idea. This concept of the dialectic goes back to Hegel, in which a thesis or idea is confronted by the antithesis, which leads to a synthesis. Throughout the course, we've seen this in terms of opinions on rote versus note, singing styles, accountability versus freedom, traditional versus technology. And it is my opinion that as the cycle of history continues, we will be confronted with countless new antitheses, and I look forward to seeing what sort of synthesis they will bring in the future.